Beneath the twin suns of Erithon, the land stretched out in endless, golden plains. The planet was a place of ancient beauty, where towering crystalline structures stood as silent sentinels to a past long forgotten by most. The people of Erithon, known as the Erithians, lived in harmony with their world, their lives entwined with the rhythms of the planet's unique energy. Vara, one of the younger members of the High Council, stood at the edge of the Great Ridge, her gaze sweeping across the expanse below. The shimmering plains of her home were illuminated by the light of both suns, casting strange shadows that danced on the surface. She felt the familiar hum of Erithon's pulse beneath her feet, a soft vibration that every Erithian could feel, a connection to the planet itself. But something was wrong. Lately, the pulse had been erratic, disturbed by a force that no one could fully understand. Vara had sensed the change weeks ago, a subtle shift that had grown more intense with each passing day. The elders said it was nothing to worry about, a natural cycle that would pass, but Vara wasn't so sure. She closed her eyes, focusing on the energy beneath her. It was a skill all Erithians possessed, the ability to feel the planet's life force, to sense its moods and changes. But today, the energy felt jagged, unsettled. Something was coming. You feel it too, don't you? Vara opened her eyes and turned to see Korin, her closest friend, approaching. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face etched with the quiet strength of a warrior. Like Vara, he had grown up in the shadow of the High Council, trained in the ways of both diplomacy and combat. I do, Vara replied, her voice low. It's getting stronger. Korin nodded, his brow furrowed with concern. The elders are wrong. Something is happening to Erithon, something we don't understand. Vara's gaze drifted back to the horizon. We need to find out what it is before it's too late. The council had been dismissive of her concerns. They were too set in their ways, too comfortable in their belief that the planet's cycles would continue as they always had. But Vara knew better. She had always been more attuned to Erithon's energy than most, able to sense the subtle shifts in its pulse. And this was no natural change. Korin stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. There are rumors, Vara. Whispers of something stirring deep within the cradle. The cradle. The heart of Erithon. It was a sacred place, a vast, crystalline structure that housed the planet's energy core. Only the most revered of the Erithians had ever been allowed inside, and even they spoke of it with awe and fear. The idea that something could be wrong with the cradle was unthinkable. Have you told the council? Vara asked, though she already knew the answer. They won't listen, Korin said, shaking his head. They're convinced it's nothing. Then we'll have to go ourselves. Korin looked at her, surprised. The cradle? You know that's forbidden. Vara's expression hardened. I don't care. If something is threatening Erithon, we have to act. Waiting for the council to decide is a risk we can't afford. Korin hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I'll come with you. But we have to be careful. If the council finds out. They won't, Vara interrupted. Not until we know what we're dealing with. As night fell over Erithon, Vara and Korin made their way toward the cradle, their footsteps silent on the crystalline ground. The journey was long and dangerous, but they moved with purpose, driven by a shared sense of urgency. The cradle loomed ahead, its towering spires glowing faintly in the twilight. It was a place of awe and power, its energy radiating in waves that could be felt even from a distance. As they approached, the air grew heavy, charged with a strange, unsettling force. Do you feel that? Korin asked, his voice tense. Vara nodded. The energy was wrong, twisted, corrupted. The pulse of Erithon was no longer a gentle hum but a fractured, discordant beat. They reached the entrance to the cradle, its massive doors sealed shut. Vara placed her hand on the smooth surface, feeling the cold, unyielding stone beneath her fingers. Can you open it? Korin asked, his eyes scanning their surroundings for any sign of danger. Vara closed her eyes, focusing on the energy around her. It was difficult, like trying to tune into a broken signal, but she could still feel the faint connection. She reached out with her mind, willing the doors to respond. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low rumble, the doors began to shift, slowly opening to reveal the dark, glowing interior of the cradle. They stepped inside, the air thick with power. The walls pulsed with a faint, eerie light, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to vibrate with each step. "This place," Korin whispered, his voice filled with awe. "It feels alive." Vara nodded, her heart racing. The cradle was unlike anything she had ever experienced, its energy overwhelming, suffocating. But beneath the surface, she could sense the disturbance, the source of the disruption that had been plaguing Erithon. "We need to get to the core," Vara said, her voice steady despite the growing tension in her chest. As they moved deeper into the cradle, the energy became more chaotic, more unstable. The pulse of the planet, once a steady rhythm, was now a frantic, disjointed beat. Suddenly, they heard a low, rumbling noise, something deep within the cradle, something that shouldn't have been there. "What was that?" Korin asked, his hand instinctively moving to the hilt of his blade. Vara didn't answer. She didn't have to. She could feel it now, the presence of something ancient, something powerful. And whatever it wasn't natural. "We need to move quickly," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "We're not alone." As they descended further into the cradle, Vara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The energy around them was growing more unstable by the second, and the sense of danger was becoming impossible to ignore. When they finally reached the core chamber, Vara's breath caught in her throat. The room was vast, its walls made entirely of shimmering crystal. At the center, the core of Erithon pulsed with a dark, chaotic energy, its once pure light now flickering erratically. And standing before it was a figure, tall, cloaked in shadows, its presence radiating power and menace. "Who are you?" Vara demanded, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. The figure turned, and for the first time, Vara saw its eyes, glowing, unnatural, filled with a darkness that chilled her to the bone. "I am the end of your world," the figure said, its voice a low, guttural growl. The figure's words echoed in the chamber, sending a cold chill down Vara's spine. The air around them seemed to thicken, the once vibrant energy of the cradle now dark and oppressive. Korin moved closer, his hand on his blade, eyes locked on the figure who had claimed to be the end of their world. "I don't know who you are," Vara said, her voice steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. "But you don't belong here. Erithon's energy is being corrupted, and it's you." The figure stepped forward, and as it emerged from the shadows, Vara could see more clearly. It wasn't fully Erithian. Its form was humanoid but distorted, like a twisted reflection of their own people. The glowing eyes remained fixed on her, unreadable, and its body seemed to flicker in and out of the darkness, as if it were more shadow than flesh. "I was once like you," the figure said softly, its voice a low hiss. "But now, I am something more. I have been reborn in the energy of this world, in the chaos beneath the surface." Korin took a step forward, his blade drawn. "You're poisoning this planet. We'll stop you." A slow, cold smile spread across the figure's face. "You don't understand, do you? Erithon has always been more than just a home. It's a living force, a source of unimaginable power. The Council hides the truth from you. But I have seen what lies beneath the surface, what this planet truly is." Vara clenched her fists, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had always known that Erithon was special, its energy unique, but the idea that the planet held a deeper, darker secret was unthinkable. "What are you?" Vara asked, her voice filled with both fear and curiosity. "I was once Erithian, like you," the figure said, its voice filled with a strange calm. "But I have been transformed by the core's energy. I've embraced its true nature, its power. And soon, the rest of this world will do the same. Why are you doing this? Vara demanded, her heart racing. What do you gain by destroying everything? The figure's eyes glowed brighter, the light reflecting off the crystalline walls of the chamber. Because only through destruction can true power be born. Erithon's energy has been kept in balance for too long, suppressed by the council. But now, that balance is breaking. And when it falls apart, I will take what remains. Korin raised his blade, his stance firm. We won't let you. Whatever you're planning, we'll stop it. The figure tilted its head, as though amused. You can try. Before either of them could react, the figure raised its hand, and a blast of dark energy shot toward them. Vara barely had time to raise her arm in defense, a shield of light forming around her as the blast struck. Korin, move, she shouted, the energy swirling around them, threatening to tear them apart. Korin leaped to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. He charged forward, his blade gleaming as he swung toward the figure, but his strike was met with another surge of dark energy, throwing him backward into the crystalline wall. Korin! Vara cried, rushing to his side as the figure advanced, its movements slow and deliberate. Foolish, the figure said, its voice dripping with disdain. You think you can fight what you don't understand? Vara knelt beside Korin, her hand glowing as she pressed it to his chest, trying to stabilize his energy. His breathing was labored, but he managed to nod, signaling that he was still conscious. We need to get out of here, Korin whispered, his voice strained. Vara glanced back at the figure, who was now standing before the core of Erithon, its hands outstretched as if it were drawing power from the planet itself. The core pulsed erratically, its light dimming and darkening with every moment. No, Vara said firmly. We're not leaving. Not until we stop this. Korin's eyes widened in surprise. Vara, we can't take this thing on alone. Vara's gaze hardened. I'm not leaving Erithon to die. She stood, turning back toward the figure, her hands glowing with the pure light of the planet's energy. She could feel the power of Erithon flowing through her, chaotic and unstable, but still present. If she could harness it, if she could control the energy, maybe they had a chance. The figure turned, watching her with interest. You're brave. But bravery alone won't save you. Vara stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. I don't need to be saved. With a sudden burst of energy, Vara raised her hands and sent a wave of light crashing toward the figure. It was a desperate move, fueled by the planet's energy, and for a moment, it worked. The dark figure staggered backward, momentarily caught off guard by the force of the attack. But it wasn't enough. The figure quickly regained its footing, its dark energy surging in response. Impressive, it said, a cruel smile forming on its lips. But you're only delaying the inevitable. The ground beneath them began to shake, the walls of the chamber vibrating as the core of Erithon pulsed violently. The energy in the room was becoming more chaotic, more unstable by the second. If they didn't stop this soon, the entire planet could be consumed. Korin struggled to his feet, his hand gripping his blade tightly. Vara, we need a plan. Vara nodded, her mind racing. They couldn't defeat this figure by brute force. Whatever it had become, it was too powerful, too connected to the core. But there had to be a way to sever that connection, to restore balance to Erithon's energy before it was too late. Keep it distracted, Vara said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. I'll try to disrupt its connection to the core. Korin didn't hesitate. He charged forward once again, his blade gleaming with light as he engaged the figure. It met him with another surge of dark energy, but this time, Korin was ready, deflecting the attack with a swift movement of his blade. Meanwhile, Vara focused all her energy on the core. She could feel the chaos within it, the dark energy twisting and corrupting the natural flow of the planet's life force. But beneath that, she could still sense the pure, untapped power of Erithon. Closing her eyes, she reached out with her mind, trying to connect with the core, to draw on its energy and restore the balance. It was difficult, the dark energy fought back, resisting her efforts at every turn, but Vara pushed harder, determined to save her world. The ground shook violently as the figure and Korin clashed, their movements blurring in the chaos of the battle. Korin's blade flashed, deflecting another blast of energy as he pressed the attack, giving Vara the time she needed. Finally, she found it, a small thread of pure energy buried deep within the core. It was weak, fragile, but it was enough. Vara focused all her strength on that thread, pulling it free from the chaos, willing it to grow stronger. The core responded, its light flickering as the dark energy began to recede, pushed back by the power of Erithon's true essence. The figure staggered, its connection to the core weakening. "No," it snarled, its voice filled with rage. "You can't stop this. You don't understand the power you're meddling with." But Vara didn't stop. She pushed harder, channeling more of the planet's energy into the core, restoring the balance that had been broken. With a final, desperate surge of power, the figure let out a scream of fury as it was consumed by the light, its form dissolving into the energy of the core. The chamber fell silent. Vara collapsed to her knees, the energy draining from her body. She could feel the pulse of Erithon returning to its normal rhythm, the chaos subsiding, but the toll it had taken on her was immense. Korin rushed to her side, kneeling beside her. "Vara, you did it." She nodded weakly, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. For now. But deep down, she knew this wasn't over. The figure had been a symptom of something much larger, something ancient and dangerous. And whatever it was still out there, waiting. Vara sat on the edge of the crystalline plateau overlooking the vast plains of Erithon, her mind still spinning from what had transpired in the cradle. The sun was setting, casting long, dark shadows across the shimmering landscape. The pulse of the planet had returned to its familiar rhythm, but there was something darker beneath it now, an uneasy feeling that Erithon's ordeal was far from over. Korin, battered but steady, approached her and sat down beside her. They had made the long trek back to the city in silence, each lost in their own thoughts, but now the time for reflection was over. They needed answers, and soon. "Do you think the council knows?" Korin asked, breaking the silence. His voice was low, cautious, as if speaking too loudly might summon the danger back to them. "They've always known," Vara said, her voice tinged with frustration. "That figure in the cradle, they're not just the product of some random energy disturbance. The council has been hiding something ancient and dangerous." Korin nodded, but there was doubt in his eyes. If they've known, why wouldn't they have acted? Why would they let it get this far? Vara let out a slow breath, watching the dying light flicker off the distant horizon. Power, fear, control. They've kept the truth hidden to maintain their authority over Erithon. But the energy we felt in the cradle, that corruption, it's connected to something larger than the council. Something even they fear. She stood up, her heart pounding with a mixture of anger and determination. "We need to confront them. They have to answer for this." Korin rose with her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Are you sure that's the right move? If they've been keeping secrets, they might not react well to being exposed. We need a plan." Vara shook her head, her jaw set with resolve. "We don't have time for careful planning, Korin. Whatever is happening to Erithon, it's accelerating. The cradle is just the beginning." They turned and began their journey back to the city, the grand towers of Erithon's capital rising like spears in the distance. As they neared the edge of the city, they saw the council hall, an imposing structure of crystal and light, gleaming with the authority of centuries. The guards at the entrance, dressed in traditional Erithian robes of silver and gold, recognized them immediately and allowed them through without question. Vara and Korin were well known in the city, but today, they were entering the hall with a different purpose. Inside, the Grand Council sat in session, their voices hushed in debate as they discussed the strange fluctuations in Erithon's energy. Vara could hear fragments of their conversation as she and Korin approached the chamber, mentions of instability, possible threats, and how best to maintain the peace. The doors opened, and all eyes turned toward them. Vara felt a surge of energy rush through her, an anger she had been holding back for too long. "Counselors," she began, her voice carrying across the vast room, "we need to talk." Counselor Thalos, one of the elder statesmen and a figurehead of the council, rose to greet them, his expression calm but guarded. "Vara, Korin, you return from the cradle. What have you discovered?" Vara's eyes locked onto his, her voice sharp with accusation. "The cradle is being corrupted. The energy we all rely on is being twisted, and there's someone, inside it, feeding off that energy. We encountered a figure, a dark presence claiming to control the core." "And you knew?" Murmurs erupted around the council chamber. Thalos' face tightened, but he didn't deny it. "The cradle has always been sacred, but its energies have been unpredictable for centuries. We have worked to stabilize it, to protect our people." "You mean control it," Korin cut in, his tone hard. "The core is a power beyond our understanding," Thalos replied, his voice carefully measured. "But we have kept it in balance. What you encountered in the cradle is an anomaly, nothing more. It is not a threat." "Not a threat?" Vara's anger boiled over. "That anomaly nearly killed us. The energy is out of control, and it's only going to get worse. You can't just sit here and pretend everything is fine while Erithon is dying beneath our feet." Thalos exchanged a glance with the other counselors, his calm facade beginning to crack. "What would you have us do, Vara? This planet has sustained us for millennia. The core's energy is the lifeblood of Erithon. Without it, we all die. We cannot risk destabilizing it further." Vara took a step forward, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "You don't understand. Something ancient is stirring beneath the surface, and it's feeding on the core's energy. Whatever it is, it's waking up, and when it fully emerges, we won't be able to stop it." The room fell into an uneasy silence. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, Counselor Rael, a younger member of the council and known for her more progressive views, broke the silence. "Perhaps we should listen to them," she said, her tone thoughtful. "The disturbances in the cradle are unlike anything we've seen before. If there's even a chance that what they say is true, we owe it to our people to investigate. Cradle knew the truth, and so do the council. They just refuse to acknowledge it. They want to keep the Erithians blind to the reality of our world." Korin sighed, running a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. "Then we have to make them listen. If the balance of Erithon is at stake, we can't let them dismiss it any longer." Vara nodded, her determination solidifying. "We need to gather evidence. The council will want proof of what we saw, what we felt. If we can convince them that the disturbances are real, they might take us seriously." Korin's brow furrowed, deep in thought. "We should speak to the elders, those who were part of the council before. They might be more open to listening to us than the current members." "Agreed. But we have to be careful. There are many who would see us as a threat, especially after what happened in the cradle," Vara warned, her voice steady. "If they think we're trying to undermine their authority, they'll do everything to silence us," Korin finished, understanding her concerns. "But if we can bring the old council together, maybe we can form an alliance against the true threat." As the two of them plotted their course of action, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the landscape in twilight. The beauty of Erithon was marred by the knowledge that something dark lurked beneath its surface, and Vara could feel the echoes of the planet's pain deep within her. The next morning, they set out to seek the elders, traveling toward the ancient ruins where the first council convened. The journey was long and arduous, winding through the crystalline forests and vast plains, but Vara felt a sense of purpose driving her forward. Arriving at the ruins, they were greeted by the aged structures that had once housed the greatest minds of their time. Time had worn the buildings down, but their majesty still lingered. Korin led the way, navigating through the crumbling archways, the shadows of the past whispering around them. They soon found themselves in the central chamber, where the remaining elders had gathered. The atmosphere was heavy with the weight of history, and as Vara looked around, she could see the lines of age etched on their faces, witnesses to centuries of change, and perhaps, to the impending crisis that threatened their world. Elder Melon, the wisest among them, looked up from where he sat, his eyes piercing yet kind. "Vara, Korin, what brings you to this sacred place? It has been long since we've seen your faces here." Vara stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Elder Melon, we need to speak with you about something urgent. There are forces at work on Erithon, forces that threaten the balance of our world." "More rumors of the Xiron, I presume?" Elder Valen interjected, his voice skeptical. "We've dealt with them before. They are a nuisance, nothing more. This is different," Korin said, his voice rising. "We encountered a being in the cradle, one that claimed to be a part of Erithon itself. It was connected to the core, drawing power from it and threatening to consume our world." The elders exchanged wary glances, their expressions betraying a mix of disbelief and concern. Melon leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "And you believe this being poses a true threat?" "We felt it," Vara insisted, her conviction growing. The energy was dark, twisted. It was disrupting the natural order of things. "We can't afford to ignore it." There was a moment of silence, the tension palpable as the elders considered their words. Finally, Melon spoke. "The cradle is a sacred place. If what you say is true, it could mean that our understanding of Erithon's balance has been flawed for generations." "Then you must help us," Korin urged, desperation seeping into his voice. "We need your wisdom, your guidance. Together, we can find a way to confront this darkness." Elder Valen scoffed, crossing his arms. "And if it's as you say? What then? You are but children playing at warriors. The council is not prepared to act on mere speculation." "Not speculation, truth." Vara shot back, her frustration boiling over. "We are telling you what we witnessed. The Xiron are not our only enemy. We must unite against whatever is stirring beneath the surface." Melon raised a hand, silencing the room. "Enough. If there is even a sliver of truth to your claims, we must investigate. We will convene to discuss this matter further, but we need proof." "We have proof," Korin said quickly. "If you allow us to return to the cradle, we can show you the core's energy directly." The elders exchanged glances once more, a silent conversation passing among them. Finally, Melon nodded. "Very well. But you must understand the gravity of what you ask. If you are wrong, the consequences will be dire." Vara and Korin shared a glance, the weight of their mission settling heavily upon them. They knew the risks but also understood the importance of their actions. This was their chance to save their world, to confront the darkness that threatened everything they loved. As the elders began discussing their next steps, Vara felt a mixture of hope and fear. The path ahead would not be easy, but they were taking the first steps toward confronting the unknown. Whatever awaited them in the depths of the cradle, they would face it together. The journey back to the cradle was fraught with tension, every member of the Erithian High Council aware that they were about to confront something that could change the fate of their world. Vara and Korin led the way, flanked by Elder Melon and a small group of the most trusted council members. The sun hung high in the sky, casting its dual light over the landscape, but the air felt heavy, charged with the unease that had taken root in Erithon. As they approached the cradle, the familiar landscape shifted into something more ominous. The crystalline structures, once symbols of their harmony, now felt like reminders of the darkness they were about to face. Vara felt the pulse of Erithon beneath her feet, a steady beat that resonated with her very core. But today, it felt weaker, strained. She could sense the unease that had gripped the planet more acutely than ever. "We must proceed with caution," Elder Melon said, his voice low and serious as they reached the entrance of the cradle. The energy is unstable, and we do not know what awaits us inside. Korin nodded, gripping his blade tightly as they stepped into the vast chamber. The light from the core pulsed gently, casting eerie shadows on the crystalline walls. But Vara could feel it, something dark was lurking beneath the surface, a malevolent force waiting for them. "Stay close," she whispered, her heart racing as they moved deeper into the chamber. As they approached the core, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The pulsing light grew erratic, flickering in shades of violet and black, the shadows around them deepening. "It's worse than I imagined," Korin murmured, taking a step back. "The core is being corrupted." Vara nodded, her breath hitching in her throat. "We need to stabilize it. If we don't, the entire planet could be consumed." Just then, the dark figure emerged from the shadows, its form flickering as it materialized in front of them. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, radiating a malevolence that sent chills down Vara's spine. "You've returned," it hissed, its voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can stop what has already begun?" Vara stepped forward, summoning the strength of Erithon's energy within her. "We will stop you. This darkness will not consume our world." The figure laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the chamber. "You are but children, playing in a game far beyond your understanding. The core's energy is mine to command. You cannot hope to contain it." Elder Melon raised his hands, attempting to draw the figure's attention. "You were once one of us. You cannot let this darkness consume you." "Consume me?" the figure echoed, its eyes flaring. "I am beyond you, Elder. I have embraced the true nature of this planet. The core is not a source of life, it is a weapon, a means to power. And I will not let you take it from me." As the figure advanced, the air in the chamber crackled with energy. The shadows danced wildly around them, and the core began to pulse violently, sending shockwaves through the ground. "Stand firm," Korin shouted, raising his blade. "We can't let it get to the core." The battle began as the figure unleashed dark energy, striking toward them with deadly precision. Vara and Korin moved together, their movements synchronized from years of training in combat. The elders joined them, channeling their own energy in an attempt to counter the darkness. "Focus your energy on the core," Vara shouted, her voice filled with urgency. "If we can stabilize it, we can sever the figure's connection." They fought fiercely, the clash of light and dark echoing through the chamber. Vara could feel the energy of Erithon surging around her, a wild force that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. But the figure was powerful, and every strike felt like a battle against a storm. As the fight raged on, Vara could feel the strain on her body. The shadows clawed at her, trying to pull her into their depths. But she wouldn't give in. Not now. With a sudden burst of determination, she called upon the energy within her, letting it flow through her fingertips. Together, she shouted, urging the elders and Korin to channel their energy into her. A brilliant light erupted from the core, illuminating the chamber as the dark energy faltered. The figure recoiled, its expression shifting from confidence to rage. "No! You cannot stop this," it screamed, but the shadows began to retreat. Vara focused harder, channeling everything she had into the core. "We must sever its connection. Now!" The light intensified, a radiant force pushing against the darkness. Korin stood beside her, his presence a steady anchor as they combined their energies, forming a brilliant barrier that surged toward the figure. The core pulsed with newfound strength, and the darkness writhed in agony as it was pulled away. With a final, desperate cry, the figure dissipated, the shadows retreating back into the depths of the chamber. As silence fell, Vara collapsed to her knees, panting. The core shimmered with a pure light, its energy stabilizing as the dark influence faded away. Elder Melon approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've done it, Vara. You've restored the balance." Korin knelt beside her, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you okay?" Vara nodded weakly, a sense of relief flooding through her. We did it, together. But even as they celebrated their victory, a lingering sense of unease settled in her chest. The battle may have been won, but the darkness they had faced was only a fragment of something much larger. The whispers of Erithon had grown louder, warning them that this was just the beginning. We must remain vigilant, Melon said, his voice grave. There are forces at play that we do not yet understand. This darkness will not remain dormant for long. As they made their way back toward the entrance of the cradle, Vara couldn't shake the feeling that they had merely scratched the surface of a much deeper mystery. Erithon was alive, and its energy was more powerful than they had ever realized. But now, they had a new strength, the bond forged through their shared experiences, a connection that would guide them through whatever darkness lay ahead. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together, Korin said, his hand brushing against hers as they stepped into the light of the outside world. And as the twin suns of Erithon rose on the horizon, Vara felt a flicker of hope. They were not just defenders of their world, they were guardians of its legacy, ready to uncover the truth and protect the heart of Erithon, no matter what challenges lay ahead.